The 3-year secret marriage ended tonight. At the celebration gala for my husband's company, he drew a dare card. Profess your love to your wife for 5 minutes. He turned, pulled his secretary into his arms, and kissed her passionately on stage. From my seat at the back of the room, I lowered my head and terminated the investment. $50 million, withdrawn. Behind him, the massive screen flashed with the confirmation, funding withdrawn. In front of 2,000 of his employees, he was instantly speechless. The victory party for Nexus Innovations was held at one of New York's most opulent hotels. A champagne tower, 10 feet high, shimmered in the ballroom. Behind the stage, a colossal screen scrolled through the company's annual achievements. Revenue doubled, a new round of financing secured, a major overseas contract landed. Behind every line of those beautiful numbers was my name, a ghost in the machine for the past 3 years. But no one knew that. They only knew that Julian Hayes was a young, brilliant CEO who, at 32, had propelled his company into the top 3 of its industry. They also knew he had a capable and stunningly beautiful secretary named Amanda Reed. As for me, I was just a woman in an inconspicuous black dress, sitting in the last row, a temporary guest pass clipped to my chest. The pass read, "Partner's guest." I glanced at those 2 words and let out a soft, bitter laugh. Guest. How ironic. Julian and I had been legally married for 3 years, our marriage certificate locked away in a safe in his home office. He had always said the company was in a critical startup phase, that announcing our marriage would affect investor perception and expose me to unwanted media attention. In the beginning, I believed him. Later, I understood the truth. It wasn't about protecting me from the press. It was about the fact that I wasn't presentable enough for him. I didn't have a socialite's pedigree. I wasn't poised and articulate in front of a camera. I hated accompanying him to networking dinners and didn't understand the intricate rules of the capital-driven world he inhabited. But he understood my $50 million. 3 years ago, Nexus Innovations was on the brink of a cash flow crisis. I sold the equity from a premarital tech project and, through my own firm, Starlight Ventures, invested the money. I didn't ask for a board seat or a position in the company. I only signed a capital protection agreement. Julian held my hands and promised, "Claire, once the company is stable, I swear I'll tell the world about you." I waited for 3 years. I waited until tonight. He stood on stage, having drawn a dare card prepared by the MC. The MC laughed, reading it aloud. "Wow, Julian, you've got some luck tonight. The challenge is to profess your love to your wife for 5 minutes." The room first fell silent, then erupted in a chorus of jeers and whistles. "Julian has a wife? No way. I thought he was single. Then what about Amanda? Do it, profess your love." I looked up at the stage. The spotlight fell on Julian's face. He was wearing the black suit I had personally ironed for him this morning, the cufflinks a birthday gift from me last year. He hesitated for a moment, a brief flicker of uncertainty. I thought he might look for me, even for a single glance. If he had, I might have given him one last chance. But he didn't. He turned his head and looked to the side of the stage. Amanda Reed was standing there in a silver mermaid gown, her eyes glistening. She looked startled by the joke, as if thrust into the spotlight against her will by the collective gaze of the crowd. Julian was silent for 2 seconds, then suddenly smiled. "All right," he said, "let's do it." The room exploded. Amanda covered her mouth, shaking her head as if to say, "No, don't." But Julian walked over, took her hand, and led her to the center of the stage. My own hands, resting on my lap, slowly tightened into fists. The MC shouted dramatically, "Wow, so Julian's wife is actually our very own Amanda Reed?" Julian didn't deny it. He took the microphone and looked at Amanda, his voice low and deep. "These last 3 years have been hard. Thank you for being with me every step of the way to get here." Amanda's eyes welled with tears. Someone from the crowd yelled, "Kiss her!" Julian leaned down. Amanda rose on her toes. They kissed in front of 2,000 employees. Applause, screams, and whistles nearly tore the roof off the hotel. I sat there, and suddenly, everything felt quiet, as if someone had vacuumed all the sound from around me, leaving only the dull thud of my heart hitting the floor. I didn't cry. I didn't rush the stage to confront them. I simply lowered my head, unlocked my phone, and opened the investment management portal for Starlight Ventures. The confirmation page had been open for hours. Tonight was supposed to be the night the second round of funding for Nexus Innovations was deposited $50 million, the startup capital for their new overseas project. Julian knew. He had texted me that afternoon. "Claire, let's make sure the transfer goes through." The company is announcing the overseas expansion at the gala tonight. I had replied with a simple, okay. He probably thought I would always say, okay. I slipped my wedding ring off my finger and dropped it into my handbag. Then, I tapped confirm. A prompt appeared on the screen. Are you sure you want to terminate the second stage funding for Nexus Innovations and trigger the risk disclosure? I looked at the two people on stage, still locked in their embrace, and pressed yes. The next second, the giant screen behind them flickered. The scrolling list of annual achievements vanished, replaced by a single line of text, so clear it was blinding. Starlight Ventures has terminated the second stage funding for Nexus Innovations. Amount, $50 million. Reason for termination. Core credit risk clause triggered. The roar of the crowd was sliced in half, as if by a knife. Amanda was the first to react, frantically pushing Julian away. Julian spun around to face the screen, his face draining of color. Whispers started to ripple through the audience. Starlight Ventures? Aren't they Nexus's biggest early-stage investor? Weren't they supposed to announce the new funding tonight? Why did they suddenly pull out? Core credit risk. What does that mean? Julian whirled towards the tech booth, his voice cracking. Who put that up there? No one answered, because it wasn't a technician. The presentation system for the gala was something I had helped them set up, connecting it to the investment portal. A few days ago, Amanda had even emailed me, asking me to coordinate an on-screen display of the successful investment for the gala. She had no idea that the person she was emailing was the true controller of Starlight Ventures. She also had no idea that if a success could be projected, so could a withdrawal. Julian stood frozen on stage for a few seconds. Then, as if struck by a thought, his eyes scanned the crowd frantically. I stood up. The lighting in the back row was dim, but he saw me. His pupils contracted violently. I picked up my handbag and turned to walk away. The piercing sound of a dropped microphone echoed behind me, followed by Julian's panicked, uncontrolled voice. Claire Evans. The entire hall fell silent again. It was the first time in 3 years he had ever said my name in a public setting. I didn't turn back. As I reached the ballroom doors, I heard his footsteps rushing down from the stage. My heels clicked against the marble floor, and I didn't pause for a second. Behind me, his employees were murmuring, Claire Evans? Who's that? Why does Julian look so panicked? What does she have to do with Starlight Ventures? Wait, she's not the one, is she? The doors opened in front of me as Julian caught up, grabbing my wrist. His voice was a low, desperate hiss. Claire, don't leave. Not now. I looked down at his hand, the same hand that had just held Amanda. I pried his fingers off, one by one. Mr. Hayes, your wife is still on stage waiting for you. His face went pale. That was a game. The atmosphere. I couldn't let Amanda be embarrassed. I met his gaze. So you let me be embarrassed instead? His throat worked, but no words came out. No one knew you were here. I laughed. So that was the real issue. Not that he had done something wrong, but that he thought no one was there to see it. I took the wedding ring from my handbag and placed it into his suit pocket. They know now. Julian panicked, reaching for me again. I took a step back. And the $50 million wasn't me throwing a tantrum. The agreement is very clear. Article 3. If the primary responsible party of the invested company exhibits significant credit risk, the investor has the right to terminate further funding. He said, his voice strained. How is me kissing Amanda a significant credit risk? I looked at him. In front of 2,000 employees, you acknowledged your secretary as your wife. He opened his mouth but couldn't form a response. At the ballroom entrance, Amanda appeared, holding up the hem of her gown, her eyes red and tear-streaked. Claire, you've misunderstood. Julian was just trying to keep the situation from getting awkward. I turned to her. What did you just call me? Amanda froze. I stepped closer. Since you know my name is Evans, and you know about my relationship with Julian, why did you have the nerve to stand there and accept his profession of love? Amanda bit her lip, tears finally falling. I'm just his secretary. I didn't dare refuse him. I nodded. So now you dare to cry? Her face went rigid. Julian stepped in front of her, frowning at me. Claire, that's enough. This is already a mess. Don't take it out on her. I watched him shield her, and the last shred of empathy I had for him dissipated. Julian, the one making a mess isn't me. I turned and walked away. This time, he didn't immediately follow. A new wave of commotion erupted from the ballroom. Someone shouted, Julian, the board members are blowing up your phone. I stepped into the elevator. In the last second before the doors closed, I saw Julian standing there, his face ashen, the corner of my wedding ring glinting from his suit pocket. He finally understood that I hadn't come to attend a celebration. I had come to collect the corpse of my marriage. The hotel's underground parking garage was nearly empty. I had just reached my car when Julian's call came through. The first time, I declined. The second, I declined again. The third time, he sent a text. "Claire, stop this. I can explain what happened tonight." I looked at the words "stop this" and found it almost funny. For the last 3 years, that was his favorite phrase. When I was upset that Amanda brought him coffee and breakfast in the middle of the night, he told me to stop it. When I discovered Amanda was seated at his right hand at the company's annual dinner while my name wasn't even on the list, he told me to stop it. On my birthday, when he forgot to come home because he was helping Amanda with a client, he told me to stop it. In his eyes, all my grievances were just me making a scene, while all of Amanda's oversteps were just part of her job. I opened my car door. Just as I got in, the passenger door was held shut from the outside. Julian had followed me down. His forehead was beaded with sweat, his breathing ragged. He had clearly run all the way. "Claire, get out of the car. We need to talk." I fastened my seatbelt. "Mr. Hayes, we have nothing to talk about." His brow furrowed at the formal address. "Do you have to be so sarcastic?" I looked up at him. "You wanted a public display, so I cooperated. You wanted your secretary to be your wife, so I let her. What more do you want?" Julian closed his eyes, reining in his temper. "I admit I handled tonight poorly, but pulling the funding is a serious matter, not a marital spat. $50 million affects a project with hundreds of people. You can't be this reckless." "A project with hundreds of people," I repeated. "And what about me?" He stared at me, lost for words. "Is my 3-year marriage?" I asked, enunciating every word, "not a serious matter?" Julian avoided my gaze. "You can't conflate the two." "But you did," I said, pulling a folded document from my bag and handing it to him. He looked down and saw the title on the cover, and his face changed. "Second Stage Funding Supplementary Agreement. We had signed this a month ago. I had personally added a clause. If the core management of Nexus Innovations is found to be concealing significant relationships, conflicts of interest, or engaging in behavior that constitutes a credit risk, the investor has the right to unilaterally terminate the funding agreement." At the time, Julian had barely glanced at it, saying, "I trust you to handle the details." I had even felt a pang of softness then and reminded him, "Julian, credit risk isn't just about business. It includes personal integrity." He had just smiled and ruffled my hair. "My greatest asset is having you." Now, he held the agreement, his fingers stiff. "Today," I said, "you publicly acknowledged Amanda as your wife and kissed her. There were 2,000 witnesses. Do you think the investor should continue to trust you?" Julian's face was grim. "You are the investor." "Correct," I said, looking him in the eye. "And I no longer trust you." A flicker of genuine panic finally appeared in his eyes. "Claire, you can't do this. If the company goes under, you know what the consequences will be." "I know," I said, inserting the key into the ignition. "That's why I only withdrew the second stage funding. I didn't recall the first stage investment, nor did I immediately initiate proceedings for breach of contract damages." I met his stunned gaze. "Consider it my final courtesy to you." The word courtesy seemed to sting him. He slammed his hand on the car door. "Courtesy? You call flashing a funding withdrawal notice in front of 2,000 people a courtesy to me?" I laughed. "And what do you call kissing Amanda in front of 2,000 people? A courtesy to me?" He was speechless. Just then, Amanda caught up to us in the garage. She was wearing Julian's suit jacket, her eyes still red. Seeing me, she approached, her voice soft. "Claire, I know you're angry right now, but the company truly can't lose this funding. You can blame me, but please don't blame Julian." I looked at the jacket she was wearing. I had bought it for Julian last winter, specifically choosing one with a cashmere lining because he was always working late. It looked quite suitable on Amanda's shoulders. I got out of the car and walked toward her. "You said the company can't lose this funding?" Amanda nodded, a tear trembling on her lash. "The overseas project has already launched. Julian has been under immense pressure. Tonight, he'd had a bit to drink and was just going along with the crowd. He didn't mean to hurt you." "And what about you?" I asked. She froze. "Were you sober?" I pressed. "You were sober when you stood by the stage in your evening gown. Sober when you let him lead you to the center. Sober when you accepted that 5-minute profession of love." And sober when you stood on your toes to kiss him. I watched her face pale. Miss Reed, you weren't forced. You've been waiting for this chance for a long time. Amanda's tears finally fell. She turned to Julian. Julian, I didn't. Julian reflexively moved to comfort her. I watched his hand on her arm, and my heart, instead of aching, felt nothing but a dull sense of disgust. In the past, it would have hurt. Now, it just felt dirty. Julian frowned at me. Claire, Amanda has been through a lot tonight, too. You don't need to push her like this. I nodded. Then you should take care of her. I pulled out my phone and opened the vehicle authorization app. The black Bentley Julian drove was registered under my premarital company. I had always granted him usage rights for his convenience. In front of him, I revoked the authorization. Julian's phone pinged. He glanced down and saw the notification. Vehicle access revoked. His face darkened. What is the meaning of this? It means what it says. I then opened our joint family account and canceled the automatic monthly transfer for the upkeep of his family's estate. Next, I went into the property management system and deleted the long-term visitor access for his family to our condominium. Julian watched my every move, his eyes finally filling with rage. Claire Evans, do you have to be this calculating with me? I'm not being calculating, I said, putting my phone away. I'm just starting. His chest heaved as he fought to control his voice. All of this? Over a single kiss? I looked at him. It's not about a single kiss. It's about 3 years. After I said that, the garage fell silent. Julian seemed to want to say something, but no words came out. Amanda suddenly spoke in a soft voice. Claire, you're going to destroy Julian's career. Whatever problems you two have as a couple, you can discuss them at home, behind closed doors. But pulling the funding in public, what will people think of him? I let out a short laugh. When you were playing his wife in public, did you ever stop to think what people would think of me? Amanda's face turned ashen. I walked back to my car and closed the door. Julian once again blocked my path. You're not leaving tonight. I rolled down the window. Julian, if you don't move, I'm calling the police. He looked at me in disbelief. I'm your husband. Not for long. His expression changed completely. I started the car. He remained standing in front of it, unmoving. I didn't honk. I just watched him. Finally, it was Amanda who tugged at his sleeve. Julian, the board members are still waiting for you. Julian closed his eyes and stepped aside. I drove away. In the rearview mirror, he stood frozen in place, with Amanda, wearing his jacket, standing close beside him. A scene like that, in the past, would have kept me up all night. But tonight, I just rolled down my window and let the night air rush in. My phone buzzed again. A message from my lawyer, David Carter. Divorce agreement is drafted. See you tomorrow at 9 a.m. I replied, okay. After a moment, I added another message. Also, please compile a complete record of all transfers over the past 3 years. David replied with a single word, ruthless. I watched the red light ahead and smiled faintly. Not ruthless. Just that from now on, I was done giving anyone a discount. It was 1 a.m. when I returned to our home. The penthouse apartment was on the riverfront, a location Julian loved. When we bought it, his company was short on cash, so I paid the down payment. To protect his pride, we put both our names on the deed. When his mother found out, she said I was a considerate woman. He had said, that's how women should be. After marriage, you shouldn't be so fixated on money. Putting both names on it makes it feel more like a real home. I had smiled then and didn't argue. Now I stood in the foyer, looking at Julian's and my slippers placed side by side in the shoe cabinet, and felt a profound sense of alienation. The first thing I did after changing my shoes was take down the wedding photo from the wall. In it, I was wearing a simple white dress, and Julian stood beside me, smiling gently. That day, he held my hand and said, we'll have a proper wedding later. I'm sorry you have to put up with this for now. I believed him. But 3 years passed with no wedding and no public acknowledgement, only him and his secretary kissing on a stage. I turned the photo frame face down and placed it in a cardboard box. Then I started packing. My books, my clothes, my documents, the decorative pieces I'd bought before we were married one by one, they all went into boxes. Anything that was solely Julian's, I left untouched. Anything we had acquired together, I labeled for my lawyer to handle later. By 3 a.m., the living room was filled with boxes. I sat on the rug, opened my laptop, and began to sort through our finances. 3 years of marriage. I hadn't realized the extent of it until now. The $10,000 monthly allowance for his family's estate, transferred by me. His mother's medical checkups, spa treatments, jewelry, and travel expenses, mostly paid by me. The costs of entertaining clients during Nexus's early days, which I had covered more than a dozen times. The final payment on a debt his father had left behind, which I had also helped clear. I had never thought these expenses were important, because back then, I considered them family. Now, looking at the long list of transactions, I finally understood. When sincerity is not cherished, it becomes an invoice others take for granted. Just before dawn, the lock clicked. Julian was home. He smelled of alcohol, his eyes were bloodshot, and his suit was heavily wrinkled. He stopped short when he saw the boxes in the living room. "What are you doing?" "Packing my things," I said without looking up. He walked over and saw the financial records and the divorce agreement on the coffee table. His face darkened. "Claire, you stayed up all night just to calculate all this?" "Yes," I said, printing the last transaction record. "Exactly 3 years. The accounts are very clear." Julian picked up the binder and flipped through a few pages. The more he read, the uglier his expression became. "You even logged my mother's spa treatments?" "I paid for them." "She's my mother, and your mother-in-law." I looked up at him. "Has she ever treated me like a daughter-in-law?" Julian frowned. "Don't drag my mother into this." Just as he said that, the doorbell rang. I glanced at the door. I knew exactly who it was. Julian went to open it, and his mother swept in, wearing a fur-trimmed coat, followed by her driver and a maid. The moment she saw the boxes, her face contorted with anger. "Claire Evans, what is the meaning of this? Putting on a show of moving out this early in the morning? Who are you trying to embarrass?" "Myself," I said, standing up. His mother scoffed. "I heard about what happened last night. A man has to play the part in social situations. You, as the wife, need to have some sense. Julian's career is at a critical point, and you pull the funding in public? Are you trying to destroy him?" I looked at her. Last night, he kissed his secretary. His mother waved her hand impatiently. "So he kissed her. So what? Amanda has been with Julian for years. She's worked hard for him. She's young, beautiful, and willing to drink with clients on his behalf. And you? You just hide at home all day, unable to even handle a single formal event." I was quiet for a few seconds. So, in her eyes, our secret marriage was my fault for not being able to handle the spotlight. "Why do you think I was hiding at home? Don't you know?" Her face tightened, but she quickly hardened her expression. "Wasn't that for the good of the company? You come from an ordinary family. If your relationship was public, people would just gossip about Julian's poor taste." "Mom," Julian cut in, his voice low. But his mother didn't think she was wrong. It's the truth. Amanda is different. An Ivy League graduate, she knows her etiquette. She and Julian look so good together. If you hadn't caused a scene last night, everyone would have had a wonderful time. I looked at Julian. He avoided my eyes. In that moment, I lost the energy to even question him. The answer was clear. He might not agree with every word his mother said, but he had implicitly consented for 3 years. He consented to our marriage being a secret. He consented to Amanda standing by his side. He consented to me giving everything to this family while not even deserving a proper title. I picked up the financial binder from the coffee table and held it out to his mother. "Since you find me so ordinary, perhaps you'd like to review the money this ordinary person has spent on you for the past 3 years. She glanced at it, and her expression changed. "What is the meaning of this?" "It means what it says," I said, flipping to the first page. "Monthly estate expenses, $10,000, for a 3-year total of $360,000. Your spa resort fees, $60,000 a year, for a 3-year total of $180,000. Last year's trip to Europe, you used my supplementary card, $36,000. And that Cartier bracelet on your wrist? I have the receipt for that too." His mother subconsciously pulled her hand into her sleeve. "I used to be willing to pay," I continued, "because I saw you as an elder. Now I am not. So, starting today, all supplementary cards are canceled. The monthly allowance is stopped. The staff salaries for the estate will be paid by the Hayes family." Her face flushed with rage. "You dare!" I looked at her calmly. "I already have." She turned to Julian. "Julian, are you just going to stand there and let her bully your mother like this?" Julian rubbed his temples. "Mom, please go home for now." "I'm not leaving!" she shrieked. "She caused a huge scene last night, and now she's trying to leave. If she walks out that door, what will people say about our family?" I took out my phone and opened the app for a moving company. Don't worry, people will soon know that I'm not just leaving home. I looked at Julian. I'm getting a divorce. Julian's face went cold. I don't agree. You don't have to, I said, pushing the divorce agreement towards him. In that case, I'll see you in court. His mother pointed a trembling finger at me. Claire Evans, don't think you can do whatever you want just because you invested some money. Without Julian, you're nothing. I placed the printed financial statements in front of her. Mrs. Hayes, you have it backwards, I said, my voice steady. Without my money, Julian wouldn't have even been able to afford his office rent back then. The living room fell silent. Julian stared at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of hurt and anger. Is that really how you see me? It's not how I see you, I said, closing the binder. It's what the accounts say. The movers arrived, knocking on the door. Miss Evans, are these the boxes? I nodded. Julian blocked the doorway. No one is moving anything. I looked at him and pulled out the proof of down payment and the premarital asset declaration. This apartment will be divided according to our agreement. Today, I am only taking my premarital property. If you want to stop me, you can have your lawyer contact mine. Julian stared at me, his jaw tight. After a long moment, he finally stepped aside. The movers began carrying the boxes out, one by one. His mother sat on the sofa, hurling insults for a long time, calling me ungrateful, calculating, and unworthy of the Hayes family. I didn't say a word in response. When the last box was gone, I went back into the bedroom and saw our matching mugs still on the nightstand. I picked up mine and threw it into the trash can. Julian stood in the doorway, his voice hoarse. Claire, does it have to come to this? I looked at him. Julian, it's not me who brought it to this. I paused. You're the one who pushed me here. I walked out with my suitcase. Behind me, his mother's angry voice echoed. Leave, and don't ever come back. You'll regret it when Amanda moves in. My steps faltered for a second. I turned back to look at her. Don't worry, I said. I will never step foot in this house again. I moved into a small apartment on the Upper West Side. It wasn't large, but it was quiet. There were no surprise calls from Julian's mother, no stench of alcohol when Julian came home late, and no accidental work photos sent by Amanda. I had the most peaceful night's sleep in 3 years. The next morning, I woke up to dozens of unread messages. 12 were from Julian, progressing from let's talk calmly to you're going to regret this, and finally, at 3 a.m., where are you? I didn't reply to a single one. Amanda had also sent a message. Claire, the Hayes family is having a dinner tonight. Mrs. Hayes would like you to come. Let's just talk things out so Julian isn't caught in the middle. I laughed at the message. She was using his mother's tone to project a hostess's authority. I replied with 2 words. Send address. Amanda quickly sent the location of the family estate. I wasn't going to reconcile. I was going to retrieve the last of my things. Inside the family safe were the insurance policies for a set of jewelry I had bought for his mother, as well as the final clearance documents for the debt I had paid off for Julian's father. I had planned to send my lawyer, but since Amanda wanted to play the lady of the house, I decided to go and watch. At 7 p.m., I arrived at the Hayes estate. The housekeeper, Maria, opened the door, her eyes immediately welling up. Ma'am, you're here. She had worked for the family for over a decade and knew about my relationship with Julian. She knew that I was the one who stayed by his mother's side during hospital stays, arranged all the holiday gifts, and ordered the cake when Julian forgot his own mother's birthday. Maria had seen it all. I smiled at her. Maria, I'm just here to pick up a few things. Before she could reply, Julian's mother's voice boomed from the living room. If you're here, then come in. Who are you trying to impress by standing at the door? I walked in. The dining room was full. Julian's aunt, his cousin, and several other relatives were seated around the table. Next to the head seat, occupied by Julian's mother, sat Amanda. She wore a pale pink dress and a pearl necklace. I recognized the necklace. I had personally selected it at an auction for his mother's birthday last year. His mother had claimed it was too youthful for her and told me to keep it in the safe. Now, it was around Amanda's neck. Seeing me, Amanda immediately stood up. Claire, you're here. She made a motion to give up her seat, but Julian's mother held her down. You stay put. Since she knows enough to show up, she can start by learning some manners. The relatives looked at me with a mixture of amusement, disdain, and discomfort. Julian, sitting on the other side, looked tense. He stood up. Claire, come sit next to me. I didn't move. His mother's voice was cold. Sit? First. She needs to properly apologize to her elders. After the scene she caused last night, embarrassing Julian in the company, she ought to apologize. Amanda softly interjected. Auntie, let it go. Claire was just upset. Julian's mother patted her hand. See? You're the sensible one. I watched this farce, finding it utterly absurd. In 3 years, I had never once sat at the head of this table. His mother had said that with our secret marriage, we had to be careful. In front of relatives, I was just Claire, nothing special. Yet Amanda, on her first visit, was seated right beside her. I walked over to Amanda. She looked up at me, a triumphant glint in her eyes. I reached out and gently touched the pearl necklace around her neck. Is it beautiful? Amanda's face tensed. Julian's mother snapped. It's just a necklace. I gave it to Amanda. You gave it to her? I took out my phone, pulled up the digital receipt, and placed it on the table. This South Sea pearl necklace was purchased by me on October 12th of last year. Price, $1,000. The gift note reads, Happy birthday to Mrs. Hayes. The table fell silent. The color drained from Amanda's face. Julian's mother, furious, stammered, Once I receive a gift, it's mine. I can give it to whomever I please. Of course, I nodded. Which is why I'm not here to ask for the necklace back. I looked at Amanda. I'm just reminding Miss Reed that before you accept someone else's cast-offs, you should probably inquire about their origin. Amanda's eyes immediately reddened. Claire, must you humiliate me like this? I laughed. You're sitting in my husband's home, wearing a necklace I bought for my mother-in-law, and expecting me to serve you tea. You didn't find that humiliating? Julian stood up. Claire. I held up a hand, cutting him off. You be quiet. He froze. It was the first time I had ever spoken to him that way in front of his family. His mother slammed her hand on the table. Insolent. Claire Evans, have you no manners? I looked at her. And forcing a wife to serve tea to a secretary is good manners? Her face turned a shade of purple. Julian said grimly, Mom, stop it. Look at her, his mother screeched, pointing at me. She used to pretend to be so docile. Now that she has a little money, her true colors are showing. Amanda was right. She's just trying to use her investment to control you. Amanda immediately lowered her head. Auntie, I never meant that. You don't have to be afraid of her, his mother said, grabbing Amanda's hand and speaking loudly for my benefit. I'm making it clear today. The daughter-in-law our family recognizes is someone sensible. Someone who can help Julian, not a woman who threatens her husband with money. Good, I nodded. I opened my phone to a checklist I had prepared. Then please have the Hayes family return what doesn't belong to them. His mother stared at me. In the family safe, I continued, there are 3 insurance policies for jewelry under my name, 1 certificate of debt clearance for Julian's uncle, and the original contract for the estate renovation costs I covered. Maria knows where it is. Maria immediately nodded. I do. Julian's mother's face was a mask of fury. Those things are in our house, so they belong to us. I looked at her. Mrs. Hayes, you can say that, but my lawyer will be here tomorrow with an itemized list, and that won't be a family dinner. Her cousin suddenly spoke in a low voice. Aunt, let's not get lawyers involved. It won't look good. The other relatives' expressions shifted. They had flattered his mother because they thought her son was successful. But now, with Nexus's funding pulled, no one wanted to get caught in the fallout. His mother saw it too, her lips trembling with rage. Julian stepped in front of me, his voice low and intense. What exactly do you want? I looked at him, to get my things back. And then, a divorce. The divorce? Can you please stop saying that? No, I said. I'm afraid you won't hear me otherwise. His eyes filled with a pained expression. Claire, I was wrong last night, but making a scene like this will only embarrass everyone. I looked up at him. Julian, are you still convinced that I'm the one embarrassing everyone? He fell silent. I turned to Maria. Could you please take me to the safe? Maria immediately led the way. Julian's mother tried to block me, but Julian stopped her. Mom, let her take them. I didn't look back. After I had collected my documents, I found Amanda waiting for me at the end of the hallway. She had taken off the pearl necklace and was holding it in her hand, her eyes red. Claire, I didn't know it was yours. I looked at her. You knew. She flinched. Not only did you know, I said, you deliberately wore it for me to see. She bit her lip, silent. I took a step closer. Amanda, you want to be Mrs. Hayes. You don't have to play the victim and step on me to get there. She suddenly whispered, But you've already lost, haven't you? I stopped. Amanda lifted her head, her eyes no longer tearful but cold. He wouldn't publicly acknowledge you, but he was willing to pull me on stage. So what if you have money? You're not the one a man actually wants to show off. Her words were venomous. In the past, they would have pierced me. But now, I just smiled. You're right. Amanda stared, stunned. And that's why, I said, I don't want that man anymore. I turned and walked towards the door. Julian chased after me. Claire. I stood on the front steps and looked back at him. Julian, did you hear that? His face went white. Of course he had heard. He had heard every word Amanda just said. I looked at him and said, word by word, you not acknowledging me was your choice. Now, me not wanting you is my choice. The night wind was cold. I walked out of the Hayes estate with my documents. This time, no one dared to stop me. The next morning, at 9 a.m., sharp, I was at David Carter's law office. He pushed the divorce agreement across the table. I've organized the asset division based on the materials you provided. The down payment on the house was from your premarital funds, so the post-marital mortgage payments will be split proportionally. As for the car, estate upkeep, and family living expenses, you can claim partial reimbursement if you wish, but proving it wasn't a gift to a relative can be tricky. Get back whatever we can, I nodded. Anything we can't, I'll consider it the price of a lesson. David looked at me. Are you sure about this? My hand didn't pause as I signed. I'm sure. He sighed. You were too patient before. I told you so many times. A secret marriage isn't the problem. The problem is, he made you invisible. I finished signing the last page and put down the pen. So now, I'm done being patient. David smiled. Good. Then we'll proceed accordingly. That afternoon, a legal notice was delivered to Nexus Innovations. At the same time, the divorce papers were sent to Julian. Less than 10 minutes later, his call came. I didn't answer. He sent a text. Claire, what is the meaning of sending a lawyer to my company? A divorce is a private matter. Do you have to make a scene at my office? I want to see you right now. I read the demanding messages and replied with a single sentence. Contact my lawyer. Half an hour later, Julian showed up at my apartment building. The concierge called me, saying a Mr. Hayes was waiting in the lobby. I didn't want to go down, but David had advised me. You can't hide forever. You can see him, but don't go upstairs alone, don't accept any gifts, and don't make any verbal promises. When I went downstairs, Julian was standing by the lobby's floor-to-ceiling windows. He had changed his clothes and styled his hair, but the exhaustion in his eyes was unmistakable. He walked over immediately. Claire? I stopped a few feet away from him. What is it? He glanced at the concierge and security guard nearby and lowered his voice. Let's go outside to talk. There's no need. His brow furrowed. Do you have to humiliate me here? I laughed. So now you're familiar with the feeling of humiliation? Julian's breath caught. He took a moment to compose himself, his voice softening. I can apologize for everything that happened. I can even understand you pulling the funding because you were angry. But not a divorce. Why not? We've been married for 3 years, not 3 days. I looked at him. So you do remember it's been 3 years. His face paled. In those 3 years, I asked, did you ever once acknowledge me publicly? Did you ever once bring me to a company event? Did you ever once defend me when your mother belittled me? Julian finally spoke. It's not that I didn't defend you. I just didn't think it was necessary to escalate the conflict. I nodded. So you always chose to let me be the one to swallow it. His expression flickered. When Amanda posted pictures on social media implying you spent the night together, I swallowed it. When your mother said I wasn't fit for high society, I swallowed it. When you took her to a client meeting on my birthday and let the dinner I cooked go to waste, I swallowed that too. I looked at him. Julian, I'm not emotionless. I just used to love you. His throat bobbed. And now? Now I don't. The 3 words hit him like a slap. His face turned hard. Don't say things you don't mean. I mean it, I said, holding out a copy of the divorce papers. Sign them. Julian didn't take it. He stared at the document and let out a bitter laugh. Claire, do you really think I'm scared of you because you pulled $50 million? I didn't answer. His voice turned cold. Don't forget, the first $50 million is already in the company's accounts. If the company suffers losses because you suddenly pulled the second round, the board of directors won't just let you walk away. Do you really think you can get out of this unscathed? I looked at him. So, when tenderness didn't work, he resorted to threats. The last bit of hesitation in my heart was snuffed out by his own hand. Julian, You were the one who signed the agreement. When I signed it, I didn't know you would use it against me like this. And when you kissed your secretary, I retorted, you didn't know you would be doing it in front of the whole world? His face was a mask of fury. The receptionist at the front desk was pretending to look at her computer, but her ears were practically twitching. Julian seemed to realize he was losing his composure. He lowered his voice. Claire, I didn't come here to fight. Then sign the papers. I have nothing more to say to you, other than to sign. I thought for a moment. Actually, I do. His eyes lit up. Return the keys to the apartment, the spare car keys, and all my supplementary credit cards, I said. The light in his eyes died instantly. Are you in that much of a hurry to cut ties with me? He asked quietly. Yes. Julian stared at me for a long time without speaking. Finally, he crumpled the divorce agreement in his hand. I won't sign. Then we'll go to court, I said calmly. He sneered. You think a judge will grant a divorce over a single kiss? No, I said, looking at him. But separation, emotional breakdown, property disputes, concealment of marital status, and long-term emotional distress will all serve as evidence. Julian's eyes hardened. You've really prepared for this. You taught me, I said. The first thing I learned in 3 years with you is that promises are worthless compared to what's written in black and white. He looked stung, his voice turning hoarse. Was I so bad to you in the beginning? When the company was at its lowest, was I the one eating instant noodles with you every day, or were you the one eating them with me? I smiled. So you do remember I was there with you. He froze. But after you became successful, I said softly. The first person you brought on stage wasn't me. The lobby was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Julian's eyes started to redden. I just wasn't thinking. I nodded. You weren't thinking about me. His hands, hanging at his sides, slowly clenched into fists. Just then, his phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID and ignored it. I saw the name, Amanda. A moment later, a text from her lit up his screen. Julian, the board members are all here. They're waiting for you to explain the funding withdrawal. I can't handle this on my own. I averted my gaze. You should go. Your secretary needs you. Julian gripped his phone tightly. Claire, don't use that tone with me. I turned and walked towards the elevator. You're going to regret this, he called out behind me. I stopped but didn't turn around. Julian, the biggest regret of my life was believing, 3 years ago, that you would ever publicly acknowledge me. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside. Before they closed, I saw him standing there, still clutching the crumpled divorce agreement. He thought I wouldn't be able to let go. But he didn't know that the moment that screen lit up at the gala, I had withdrawn my sentiment along with my money. An emergency board meeting for Nexus Innovations was scheduled 2 days later. I wasn't supposed to attend. The termination notice had been sent, and my lawyer had submitted the official explanation. But Julian said something in the meeting that changed everything. The funding from Starlight Ventures was a form of internal spousal support, not a standard investment. Claire Evans is simply acting out over a domestic dispute. The board need not panic. When David forwarded me the meeting minutes, he was furious. He's trying to reframe your legitimate investment as a marital spat, turning a corporate credit risk into a domestic issue. I read the sentence without any emotion. This was classic Julian. When he needed my money, I was an investor. When he had to face the consequences, I was a temperamental wife. I replied to David, request to make an official statement to the board. At 3 p.m., I walked into the headquarters of Nexus Innovations. I had been to this building many times, but always through the underground garage, using Julian's private elevator to avoid being seen. Today, I walked in through the front door. The receptionist looked at me, puzzled. Ma'am, who are you here to see? I handed her my business card. She looked down and saw the words, Claire Evans, Principal, Starlight Ventures. Her expression changed instantly. Within a minute, the head of administration came down to personally escort me. On the way up, many employees stared, their eyes filled with shock, curiosity, and a hint of embarrassment. I knew the company's internal forums had been buzzing for days. Some said I was Julian's secret wife. Others said I was the jilted benefactor. Some even claimed I was using my money to force a marriage, and that Julian had turned to Amanda out of desperation. I offered no explanation. Some things are best saved for the most appropriate stage. The boardroom was on the 26th floor. When the doors opened, the room was full. Julian was at the head of the table, with Amanda standing behind him, looking pale. When he saw me, Julian's brow furrowed. What are you doing here? Before I could speak, David placed the authorization documents on the table. As the principal of Starlight Ventures, Miss Evans has the right to provide clarification on the matter of the funding termination. The board members exchanged glances. An older director immediately said, "Please, Miss Evans, have a seat." As I sat down, Amanda leaned over and whispered to Julian, "Julian, this wasn't on the agenda." I looked at her. "Miss Reed, who prepared the agenda?" She froze. "I did." "Then you should remember that there was another item on the original agenda for that night. Second stage funding confirmation display." Amanda's face turned a shade paler. I placed a printed email on the table. "This is the email you sent to Starlight Ventures' contact address, requesting our cooperation for an on-screen display of the successful funding at the gala." The directors immediately turned to look at Amanda. She stammered, "I was just following Julian's instructions. I didn't know that Miss Evans was." "You didn't know who I was, that's fine," I cut her off. "But you knew Starlight Ventures was a formal investor." I produced another document. "This is the first stage investment contract and the second stage supplementary agreement. The signatories are Nexus Innovations and Starlight Ventures, not a personal loan between Julian Hayes and Claire Evans." I looked at Julian. "Mr. Hayes, you stated in this meeting that this was internal spousal support. Where is your evidence?" Julian's face was grim. "Claire, do you have to do this?" "In a corporate meeting," I said, my voice level, "please address me as Miss Evans." Someone coughed. Julian's expression grew even darker. The CFO, Carolyn Vance, a meticulous woman in her 40s, stood up. She opened a file. From a financial perspective, the $50 million first-stage funding from Starlight Ventures was recorded as an external investment, not a personal loan or spousal gift. The second-stage funding was not yet received and, according to the agreement, can be terminated. Julian shot her a furious look. Carolyn didn't flinch. "Mr. Hayes, I am simply stating the financial facts." The atmosphere in the room shifted completely. The older director frowned. "So, what exactly does core credit risk refer to?" I didn't answer immediately. I placed the gala's event schedule on the table. In this schedule, the dare card in the prize draw was confirmed by Miss Reed. The content was, "Profess love to your wife for 5 minutes." Amanda went white. "Mr. Hayes," I continued, knowing he was married, in front of 2,000 employees and guests, pulled his secretary on stage, allowed the MC to refer to her as his wife, and engaged in intimate behavior. I paused. "This is not simply a personal moral issue. Nexus Innovations is pursuing overseas partnerships. In the disclosure materials, Mr. Innovations is not simply a personal moral issue. Hayes's personal credibility and the stability of the management team are critical evaluation points. Concealing a marriage while publicly creating a false partner figure is more than enough to constitute a credit risk." The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Julian stared at me, his voice tight with rage. "You wrote our marriage into a risk report." I looked at him. "You turned our marriage into a risk." Amanda suddenly spoke up. "Miss Evans, Julian never confirmed I was his wife. The situation was chaotic. The MC was just joking." I turned to her. "Then why didn't you deny it at the time?" Amanda's eyes welled up. I was afraid of ruining the mood." I laughed. "You were afraid of ruining the mood, so you let me, his actual wife, watch you two kiss from the audience?" Her face grew even paler. A director asked quietly, "Mr. Hayes, have you really been married for 3 years?" Julian didn't speak. His silence was the answer. Another director's face soured. "Why was such a significant relationship kept secret from the company?" "That is my private life," Julian finally said. "Concealment is a private matter," I retorted. "Passing off your secretary as your wife is a public one." In the boardroom, some of the looks directed at Amanda changed. She finally started to panic, turning to Julian. "Julian, I really didn't mean to. I was just swept up by the crowd." For the first time, Julian didn't immediately defend her. I saw it, but felt no satisfaction. I knew he wasn't suddenly enlightened. He had just realized that defending her now came with a price. Before the meeting ended, the board requested a written explanation from Julian and suspended Amanda from all involvement in the overseas project. Amanda's face was ashen. Julian's was no better. I gathered my documents to leave. As I reached the door, Julian caught up with me. "Claire Evans." I stopped. He asked, his voice low and strained. "How far are you going to push me?" I looked at him. "Julian, You still think I'm the one pushing you? His expression was complicated. I'm just taking back the things you no longer deserve to have. He gritted his teeth. Including me? I looked at him and found the question absurdly funny. You're not a thing. His face tensed. You're just someone I no longer want, I added. I turned to leave. Just as the elevator doors were about to close, Amanda rushed forward. Claire Evans, we need to talk. She had dropped the sisterly act. I held the open door button and looked at her. Fine. She stared at me, her eyes full of resentment. Do you think you've won? I didn't come here to win a fight against you, I said calmly. Then why are you trying to destroy me? I laughed. Amanda, that's not what you were saying when you were sitting in the seat of honor. The elevator doors slowly closed, leaving her standing outside, her face twisted in a mask of rage. I knew she wouldn't let it go that easily. Sure enough, at 10 p.m. that night, the company's internal chat groups exploded. A photo of me was posted with the caption, "This is the secret wife who pulled $50 million and is trying to force Julian's hand." After the photo was posted, the group was silent for a few seconds before messages started flooding in. So that's Claire Evans? She looks pretty ordinary. So Julian really is married. Did she pull the funding because she was jealous of Amanda? If the project fails, what happens to our bonuses? The narrative was quickly hijacked. Someone claimed I had always controlled Nexus's finances, working from the shadows to manipulate Julian. Another said Julian and Amanda were the real love story, and I was using my investment to hold the marriage hostage. Someone even said I had deliberately projected the withdrawal notice at the gala to force his hand. I screenshotted every single message. David called me. Should I send a cease and desist? Wait, I said. For what? For him to dig his own grave. Sure enough, half an hour later, Amanda posted on her personal social media. She didn't name names, but everyone knew who she was talking about. To walk with someone from their lowest point to the top doesn't always mean you'll be seen. But I believe true sincerity isn't measured in money. I hope certain people won't use capital to harm something we all worked so hard to build. The post was accompanied by a photo of her desk, late at night, piled with work. Many employees liked the post and left comments. Amanda, we appreciate your hard work. We all know you were there for Julian. Some people just use money to throw their weight around. I looked at the comments, my finger hovering over the screen. Walk with someone from their lowest point to the top. When did she join Nexus? 2 years ago. The company's truly difficult period was 3 years ago. That was the year Julian couldn't even make payroll, staring blankly at spreadsheets in a rented apartment. I was the one who sold my premarital assets, stayed up for 3 days straight helping him refine his business plan, and went with him to meet investor after investor. Amanda arrived when Nexus had already secured its first round of funding and moved from a cramped office to a downtown high-rise. She had accompanied him during the ascent, not through the mud. She made her claim with such confidence because she knew the old me would never correct her. The old me was afraid of embarrassing Julian, afraid of public opinion, afraid of hurting the company. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I texted David. You can send it now. At 11 p.m., Starlight Ventures released an official statement. It was brief. The relationship between Starlight Ventures and Nexus Innovations is a formal investment relationship, governed by legally binding contracts. It is not a spousal gift or personal loan. The termination of the second stage funding was based on the invested party's core leadership publicly fabricating a spousal identity, concealing significant relationships, and thereby triggering a credit risk event. Starlight Ventures reserves the right to pursue legal action against any parties responsible for spreading defamatory rumors. The statement was accompanied by 3 images: the key page of the investment agreement, Amanda's email requesting cooperation for the gala's on-screen display, and a redacted copy of my and Julian's marriage certificate showing the date of registration. No emotion, just facts. Half an hour later, the sentiment in the company chat groups had shifted. So Claire Evans really is his wife. What was that social media post from Amanda about? She only joined 2 years ago. That kiss at the gala was seriously out of line. If it were me, I'd pull the funding too. Julian really messed this one up. Amanda's post was quickly deleted. Julian called me. I answered. His first words were, "Take down the statement." I sat by the window, watching the traffic below. Why? His voice was tight with anger. You posted our marriage certificate for the whole world to see my private life as a joke. It was redacted. It's still our private business. I laughed. So now you understand that marriage is private? You didn't seem to think so when you were letting your secretary play your wife. He was silent for a few seconds, then changed his tone. Claire, I know you're hurt, but this is going to cause chaos within the company. The company isn't in chaos, I said. The illusion you created is. He breathed heavily on the other end of the line. I didn't ask Amanda to make that post. I know. I'll handle her. You don't have to tell me. You really don't care at all anymore? I listened to the exhaustion in his voice, and my heart felt not pain, but a desolate emptiness. Julian, when I did care, you didn't handle her. His voice was rough. I thought you would understand. I understood for 3 years, I said. Now it's your turn to understand that I no longer want to. The line went quiet. After a long moment, he said quietly, I'm coming to see you tonight. Don't. We have to talk. Before I could answer, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole. It wasn't Julian, it was Amanda. She stood in the hallway in a white coat, her face pale, but her eyes sharp. I said into the phone, Your secretary is here. Julian's voice changed. Don't open the door. I hung up. I didn't let Amanda in, but I buzzed open the building's outer security door, speaking to her through the intercom. She stared up at the camera. Are you satisfied now? Miss Reed, I said. That's a question I should be asking you. She laughed. Claire Evans, you really think you're so clever, don't you? Using contracts to pressure him, your status to pressure me, your money to pressure the company. I didn't say anything. She stepped closer to the entrance, her voice low. But do you know what? Julian doesn't love you. He's just grateful. He married you back then because the company was about to collapse, and you had the money. I looked at her on the monitor. If anyone else had said that, it might have hurt. But coming from Amanda, it just sounded desperate. Did he tell you that? Amanda's eyes flickered. Everyone at the company can see it. He never takes you anywhere, but he takes me to meet clients, to dinners, to stand by his side. You're the one who's redundant. I nodded. So you want to take my place? She didn't deny it. I'm a better fit for him. A better fit as his secretary or as his wife? Amanda sneered. At least he's willing to let me stand in the light. I looked at the camera and said, my voice clear and cold, Amanda. Standing in the light doesn't make you the light. It can also just be something dirty being illuminated. Her expression changed. I sent a file to her phone, a copy of the legal notice. You disseminated my photo in a private company forum and implied I was using capital to harm the company. That constitutes defamation and invasion of privacy. You have until 10 a.m. tomorrow to issue a public apology. She gritted her teeth. You'd sue me? You can try me. Panic finally crept into her eyes. Just then, the elevator in the lobby dinged open. Julian rushed out. When he saw Amanda at the entrance, his face darkened. Who told you to come here? Amanda's eyes immediately reddened. Julian, I just wanted to explain things to Claire. Explain things at her home? It was the first time Julian had ever used such a harsh tone with her. Amanda froze. I watched the scene unfold on my screen, and suddenly found it all tedious. A boundary drawn too late isn't a defense. It's damage control. Julian turned to my camera. Claire, open the door. There's no need, I said through the intercom. His eyes were bloodshot. I want to talk to you. I looked at him on the screen. Julian, everything we have to talk about will be handled by our lawyers. He clenched his fists. Amanda whispered beside him. Julian, let's just go. Don't make Claire angrier. Julian whirled on her. You be quiet. Amanda stood there, utterly stunned. I ended the call and turned off the monitor. I heard Julian's muffled voice from the hallway. Claire, I will not agree to a divorce. I leaned against the door, not responding. His agreement no longer mattered. The next morning at 10 a.m., Amanda did not apologize. She chose another method. On Nexus Innovations' anonymous internal forum, a long post appeared. The title: An Ordinary Employee's Honest Opinion. Julian has had it so hard. The post painted Julian as a visionary entrepreneur oppressed by both capital and a controlling marriage. It portrayed Amanda as a dedicated partner who toiled alongside him. It depicted me as a manipulative wife, pulling strings from the shadows. One sentence was particularly sharp. Some women don't show their faces not because they're low-key, but because they know they don't deserve to stand in the spotlight. The post was quickly screenshotted and spread to public platforms. Though it didn't use names, the keywords Nexus Gala, $50 million withdrawal were enough for everyone to connect the dots. David came to my apartment, furious. I'm filing a lawsuit right now. I read the post from start to finish. First, find out who posted it. Does it matter? It's either Amanda or someone she put up to it. We need evidence. Fine, David nodded. I'll have my tech team trace it. I got up to get a glass of water, and my phone rang. It was Carolyn Vance. I answered. Her voice was low and cautious. Miss Evans, there's something I think you should know. Go on. Amanda approached me yesterday. She asked me to change the accounting notes for the first stage investment to personal spousal support. I refused. My fingers tightened around my glass. Is there a written record of this? She sent me an internal message. Can you provide it? Carolyn was silent for a few seconds. Yes, but I don't want to get involved in a personal dispute. Carolyn, I said, this isn't a personal dispute. She asked you to falsify financial records. The line went quiet. After a moment, she said, I understand. Half an hour later, Carolyn sent me the chat logs. Amanda's message was carefully worded. Carolyn, Julian's feeling is that the Starlight funding is being misinterpreted externally. Is there a way we can rephrase it in the internal materials? Something like spousal support or temporary bridge loan. Carolyn's reply was blunt. Financial records cannot be altered. Amanda had replied, It's a difficult time. We're all just trying to do what's best for the company. I forwarded the screenshots to David. He understood immediately. She's walking right into it. At 2 p.m., Starlight Ventures released another statement, this time with a much harder edge. It stated that the anonymous online post contained severe falsehoods and that certain individuals had attempted to misrepresent the nature of the investment to mislead the public and obstruct the legal process. Starlight had preserved all evidence and would pursue legal action against the poster and anyone who shared the content. Simultaneously, Carolyn Vance, in her capacity as CFO of Nexus, submitted a written report to the board of directors detailing the attempt to alter financial records. The report wasn't made public, but news of it spread like wildfire within Nexus. The company chat groups exploded. Who asked Carolyn to change the records? Okay, this is definitely not a relationship issue anymore. Amanda wasn't at work today. I heard the board summon Julian. I actually felt sorry for Amanda before, but now I feel like I was used. You know, Claire Evans has never once resorted to name-calling. She's just presented facts. That last comment got a lot of likes. I looked at the screen, my heart calm. I used to think the truth would reveal itself. I now understood that the truth doesn't walk. You have to drag it out and put it on display for everyone to see. That evening, Julian came. This time, he didn't ring the bell. He texted me from downstairs. I'm outside. I won't come up. Can you come down for 10 minutes? I didn't want to see him, but he sent a second text immediately after. It's about Amanda. I'll give you a full account. I replied, I don't need it. He wrote back, what about us? I stared at that question for a long time before finally going downstairs. It wasn't because my heart had softened. It was because some things needed to be said, face to face, once and for all. Downstairs, by the flower beds, Julian stood under a streetlight. He was holding a bouquet of white roses. Seeing me, he visibly relaxed. Claire, I looked at the flowers. You remembered wrong. I don't like white roses. He froze. I like sunflowers, I said. I used to have a pot of them on the balcony of our old rental. Julian had complained it took up too much space, promising that when we got a bigger place, he'd plant a whole field for me. Later, when we moved to the riverfront penthouse, the balcony was filled with the orchids his mother loved. The sunflower pot was thrown out during the move. Julian's hand holding the flowers tightened. I just thought, white roses are for apologies. Apologies don't require flowers, I said. They require action. He said quietly, Amanda has been suspended. The anonymous post, I'll have it investigated. If it was her, I won't protect her. And if it wasn't, I asked. He hesitated. I'll find out who it was. Good, I nodded. I turned to leave. Claire, he called out, his voice urgent. That's not all I wanted to say. I stopped. He took a step closer, his voice hoarse. I've been thinking a lot these past few days. I neglected you. I let you suffer. The secret marriage. I admit, I was selfish. I thought as long as we were happy in private, it didn't matter what the outside world thought. I looked at him. Were we happy in private? He faltered. Do you remember what I ate for my birthday last year? I asked. Julian opened his mouth, but no words came out. You don't, I said. You were at a client dinner with Amanda. I ate a bowl of instant noodles by myself. His eyes filled with panic. I got you a gift later. The bag your assistant bought. His face grew even paler. Claire. Julian, Your idea of being happy in private was you having someone waiting at home, someone to iron your clothes, someone to take care of your mother, and someone to bail out your company. But what about me? His eyes were red. I know that now. He reached for my wrist. I glanced down at his hand, and he immediately let go. I'm sorry. It was the most sincere apology he'd given in days. But my heart didn't waver. Julian, I said, I accept your apology, but I don't accept you. He froze as if struck. Why? I looked at him earnestly. Because you're not incapable of love. You just decided my love wasn't worth cherishing. Pain finally surfaced in his eyes. I took a step back, signed the divorce papers as soon as possible. With that, I turned and walked back towards the building. As I reached the entrance, he called out behind me, "What if I make our marriage public?" I stopped. His voice was laced with desperation. "I can release a statement right now. Tell everyone you're my wife. You want a wedding, I'll give you a wedding. You want a position, I'll give it to you. Claire, let's start over." I turned and looked at him. Under the streetlight, holding the white roses, he looked both pathetic and sincere. But all I could see was him on the gala stage, holding Amanda's hand. "Julian," I said, "what I wanted was for you to give it to me willingly." I paused. "Not as compensation after I've been humiliated." The color drained from his face. I walked into the building. Before the elevator doors closed, I heard the sound of the bouquet hitting the ground. The next day, Julian actually released a statement. The official Nexus Innovations account posted, "Mr. Julian Hayes is married. His wife is Miss Claire Evans. The relationship was previously kept private for personal reasons, which caused harm to Miss Evans, for which Mr. Hayes expresses his deepest apologies." The short statement immediately trended online. The company chat groups were in an uproar. He actually did it. So what was Amanda then? This apology feels kind of forced. Claire Evans has the patience of a saint. A 3-year secret marriage, only to watch your husband kiss his secretary? Who could stand that? 10 minutes after the statement was released, Julian texted me. "I made it public." I stared at the 4 words, feeling nothing. He was like a student who had turned in his homework 3 years late, still expecting the teacher to praise him for his effort. I replied with only one sentence. "The divorce proceedings remain unchanged." He called immediately. I didn't answer. That afternoon, David accompanied me to the city clerk's office to inquire about the divorce cooling-off period. Since Julian wouldn't sign the papers, we couldn't file for an uncontested divorce, but if he was willing to cooperate, we could at least submit the initial application today. I didn't expect him to be there. At the entrance to the office, Julian was standing on the steps. He was alone, no secretary, no driver. When he saw me, he walked over, his voice hoarse. "I thought you wouldn't come." "I'm always on time," I said. He gave a bitter smile. He used to say that about me too. Every time he lost track of time in a meeting, I'd be waiting downstairs 10 minutes early. Every time his mother had a checkup, I'd have the car and doctor arranged on time. Every time a company document needed his signature, I'd have it prepared in advance. I was always on time. He was just never on time to meet me. We walked into the hall, took a number, filled out the forms, and waited. The entire process was so quiet, we didn't seem like a couple on the verge of divorce. Julian sat next to me, his knuckles white as he gripped his driver's license. When our number was called, he didn't move. The clerk called out, "Number 72? Are you here?" I stood up. Julian remained seated. I looked down at him. He looked up, his eyes bloodshot. "Claire, is there really no chance?" I didn't answer right away. The hall was filled with people. Some were arguing, some sat in silence. Some were crying and some were smiling with relief. I looked at Julian and remembered the day we got our marriage license. He had been sitting on a similar chair, his palms sweating. He had told me, "Claire, I have nothing right now, but I promise I'll never make you regret this." I had taken his hand and said, "I'm not afraid of you having nothing. I'm afraid that one day, you'll have everything and decide I'm not worthy of standing beside you." That day had come. "No," I said. "There's no chance." The light in Julian's eyes went out. He slowly stood up. Just then, a loud wail erupted from the entrance. "Claire Evans, you can't be this cruel." I turned to see his mother rushing in, her hair a mess, with Maria and her driver trailing behind. The moment she saw me, she lunged, trying to grab my arm. David immediately stepped in front of me. "Mrs. Hayes, please calm down." She ignored him and collapsed onto the floor, sobbing. Everyone, come and judge for yourselves. My son worked so hard to build his company, and his own wife, instead of helping, is now trying to divorce him and pull her money out. She's trying to ruin us. The crowd started to stare. Julian's face turned ashen. Mom, what are you doing? His mother's cries grew louder. What am I doing? I'm saving your family. You fool, you're letting a perfectly good marriage fall apart. What will happen to the company? What will happen to our family? Listening to her, I suddenly had to laugh. So, she wasn't sad to lose me as a daughter-in-law. She was sad to lose my money. She turned to the onlookers. She thinks she can bully us just because she has money, 3 years of marriage, and she wants a divorce just like that. And she wants to nickel and dime us for every penny she ever gave the family. Tell me, what kind of woman does that? People started to murmur. David tried to speak, but I held him back. I walked over to Julian's mother and knelt down. Mrs. Hayes, you said I didn't help the family for 3 years? She flinched. I took out my phone and opened the itemized list I had compiled. Should I read it out for everyone? Her face changed. I didn't wait for her answer. Year 1. The remaining $86,000 of your brother-in-law's debt, paid by me. Year 2. $32,000 for the estate's roof repair, paid by me. The surgery, nursing care, and rehabilitation costs for your fall, totaling $61,000, paid by me. Your monthly allowance of $10,000, which I never missed for 3 years. The crowd grew quiet. His mother's lips trembled. That was your duty. I used to think so too. I nodded. I stood up. So I did it for 3 years. But how did you treat me? I looked at Maria. Maria, why don't you tell them? Maria, who had been standing in the back with tears in her eyes, froze when Julian's mother shot her a death glare. Don't you dare! But Maria took a step forward. Ma'am has never been unfair to the Hayes family, she said, her voice soft but clear. When Mr. Hayes was busy with the company and the old Mrs. Hayes was sick, it was the ma'am who ran to the hospital day and night. When the old Mrs. Hayes couldn't eat the hospital food, it was the ma'am who cooked soup and brought it to her every day. Last New Year's Eve, Mr. Hayes didn't come home, and the ma'am stayed up all night with the old Mrs. Hayes, who still complained that she was a poor conversationalist. Julian's mother's face turned ghostly white. Maria continued. The first time Miss Reed came to the estate, the old Mrs. Hayes sent the ma'am to the kitchen to help, telling her not to let an outsider know her true status. Ma'am didn't say a word. Someone in the crowd whispered, "That's horrible." Julian stood frozen, his face draining of color. Some of these things he knew, some he didn't. But not knowing wasn't an excuse. He had just never bothered to ask. His mother, finally panicking, scrambled up and tried to grab Julian's arm. Julian, Mom was just doing what's best for you. Julian looked at her, his voice low. Mom, why did you never tell me any of this? I didn't want to distract you, she cried. I laughed. Such a familiar excuse. For the company, for his career, for his own good. Everyone could sacrifice me for his own good. I turned to the clerk. Excuse me, can we please continue with the proceedings? Julian looked at me, his eyes filled with pain. Claire. I didn't look at him. We couldn't complete the process that day. His mother's scene had disrupted the office, and the staff advised us to come back another time. As I left the building, Julian followed me. I didn't know Mom did all that to you. I stopped. Did you not know? Or did you not want to know? He froze. Julian, I said, every grievance I suffered in your home didn't just happen overnight. It was your repeated silence that gave them the courage to continue. His eyes were red. I'll make it up to you. Don't bother, I said, looking at him. The person you should be making it up to isn't me. It's the Claire Evans who believed in you 3 years ago. With that, I got into David's car. As we drove away, I saw Julian standing at the entrance to the city clerk's office. His mother was still crying, but he wasn't comforting her. In that moment, he was finally starting to see clearly. Unfortunately, I no longer needed him to. The video of Julian's mother causing a scene at the city clerk's office inevitably made its way online. In it, she was wailing about how I was bullying them with money. But soon after, a clip of Maria's testimony was also released. The public opinion tide turned swiftly. That mother-in-law is suffocating. The daughter-in-law pays for everything and still gets told she's not good enough. The CEO husband is married, kisses his secretary on stage, and his mother expects the wife to just take it? Unbelievable. The woman was right to pull her funding. no question. The comments section on Nexus Innovations' official social media accounts was a wasteland. Julian was forced to issue another statement, insisting that his family dispute would not affect company operations and promising to address internal management issues. But once an investor's trust is broken, a few sentences can't mend it. The overseas partners demanded a reevaluation. The board asked Julian to suspend all public appearances. Amanda was formally suspended pending an investigation. Carolyn Vance kept me updated on these developments. I didn't ask for details. My only focus was the divorce. But Julian, it seemed, had become a different person. He texted me every day. In the morning, he'd ask if I'd eaten. At noon, he'd remind me it was getting cold. At night, he'd say he was in our old apartment and that seeing my empty closet made him realize what the home was missing. I never replied. On the third day, he sent a photo. It was the balcony of our riverfront penthouse. The orchids were gone, replaced by a row of sunflowers. He wrote, "I remember you like these." I stared at the photo for a long time, then deleted it. It wasn't that I wasn't touched. It was that a memory remembered too late is, in itself, a form of cruelty. That afternoon, David accompanied me to the apartment to retrieve the last of my files. Julian was there. He didn't try to stop me. He just stood in the living room, watching the movers carry out my boxes of books. The apartment no longer felt like a home. The wedding photo was gone from the wall. The shoe cabinet was half empty, and my favorite mug was missing from the kitchen. Julian stood in the cavernous living room and said quietly, "I used to come home and just take it for granted that you'd be here." I didn't respond. "Now I realize," he continued, "your touch was on everything in this house." I zipped my document bag. Traces can be erased. He gave a bitter smile. "Can people be erased too?" I looked at him. Yes. Pain flashed in his eyes. Just then, his phone rang. It was the board's secretary. Julian answered, and his expression slowly changed. After he hung up, he looked at me. "Something's happened with Amanda." I didn't ask, but he told me anyway. "She used your identity to expense several event-related costs." I frowned. "My identity?" "She was in charge of some family dinners and client receptions. She got a hold of your guest information from the company system. She billed several of her personal purchases under the expense line for CEO's wife's reception fees." I understood instantly. No wonder some of the gifts Julian's mother had given Amanda had shown up on the company's expense reports. Amanda didn't just want my position. She was secretly using the privileges that came with being Mrs. Hayes. Julian's voice was low. Carolyn found it. "The amount isn't huge, but the nature of it is serious." I looked at him. "And I'll handle it," he said. "This is a company matter, and it's also evidence of how she wronged you." I almost laughed. "Julian, you're only now looking for evidence?" His face went pale. I turned to leave. He suddenly picked up an envelope from the coffee table and handed it to me. The spare keys to the apartment, the car, and the supplementary cards. I took it and checked the contents. Everything was there. "I haven't used any of them," he said quietly. "Thank you for your cooperation," I said. He laughed self-deprecatingly. "Is that all we have left between us? Cooperation? And legal procedures." He closed his eyes. "Claire, I know you won't come back easily, but can't you just not sentence me to death so quickly?" I looked at him calmly. "I'm not sentencing you to death. I'm just leaving you." The words seemed to freeze him in place. I walked to the door. Just as I was about to open it, his mother burst in. I don't know where she got the news, but she looked haggard and disheveled. The moment she entered, she broke down in tears and grabbed my hands. "Claire, Mom was wrong." I was stunned for a second, then took a step back. Julian was also shocked. "Mom, get up." His mother wouldn't move. She cried. "It was all my fault before. I was mean. I looked down on you. Please, don't divorce Julian. Don't pull the money. Mom is begging you." I watched her kneeling on the floor. In the past, I would have panicked. I would have helped her up, my heart softening. Now, all I felt was exhaustion. "Mrs. Hayes, you don't have to do this." She shuffled forward on her knees, trying to grab the hem of my pants. I moved away. "I know you're hurt," she wailed. "That little tramp, Amanda, I'll never let her in this house. From now on, you're my only daughter-in-law. Come back, and I'll give you the head seat at the table. All the keys to the house." I smiled. "Everything you're offering me now is what I should have had without ever needing to kneel." His mother froze. I looked at Julian. He stood there, his face a mixture of shame and agony. "Julian, do you see?" I said. "She's not kneeling because she understands my pain." I paused. "She's kneeling because the Hayes family is in pain." His mother's crying stopped abruptly. Julian's face turned white. "When I was at her side in the hospital, she never knelt," I continued. "When she cursed me for not being good enough for you, she never knelt. When she let Amanda play hostess, she never knelt. Now that the company is in trouble and the allowance has been cut off, she kneels." The living room was terrifyingly quiet. His mother's face flushed red, then paled. Julian helped her up, his voice hoarse. "Mom, stop begging." She tried to speak, but for the first time, he cut her off with a cold, "Enough." I glanced at them, then left without another word. As I walked out of the penthouse, I took the spare keys from the envelope and placed them on the console table in the foyer. Julian stared at me, confused. "Keep these," I said. "I won't be coming back." The door closed. From inside, I could hear his mother's muffled sobs. I stood in the elevator, watching the numbers descend, feeling not the thrill of victory, but a belated sense of relief. Not all acts of contrition deserve forgiveness. Some are just the last resort of those who have realized there are no more advantages to be had. Amanda's suspension and investigation concluded faster than I expected. She had used the CEO's wife reception fund to expense personal purchases totaling over $19,000. She had also contacted the wives of 2 business partners, posing as Julian's fiancé and implying she could represent the Hayes family at private functions. The board kept these findings quiet, but Amanda wasn't one to go down without a fight. The day she was to be officially terminated, she crashed Nexus Innovations' public press conference. Julian was supposed to be addressing the media and employee representatives about the recent turmoil. I hadn't planned to attend, but David called me. "Amanda is at the press conference, and she's talking about you." I opened the live stream. Amanda was standing in the middle of the conference hall, her face pale, her voice shrill. "You all blame me, but who was it that allowed me to do these things? If Julian truly loved his wife, why didn't he acknowledge her for 3 years? Why did he take me to every single gala? Why did he have me plan his mother's birthday party?" The room erupted in chaos. Julian stood on the stage, his face a mask of stone. Amanda's tears fell. "I admit I have feelings for Julian, but I wasn't the only one in this fantasy. He's the one who gave me hope. He's the one who made me misunderstand. He's the one who made me believe that one day, I would be Mrs. Hayes." Her words were a final, desperate attack. She was trying to ruin Julian and drag me down with him. A reporter immediately shouted, "Mr. Hayes, is what Miss Reed says true? Did you for a long time allow a subordinate to act as your partner in private settings? And did Miss Evans know about this?" I looked at the screen, then closed the laptop and grabbed my coat. David asked, "Where are you going?" "Some things," I said, "need to be said clearly before the end." 20 minutes later, I arrived at the press conference. Security tried to stop me, but Carolyn Vance saw me and immediately came over. "Miss Evans." She led me in through a side door. The hall was still in an uproar. Amanda was crying in the aisle, and Julian stood silently on the stage. The moment I appeared, every camera turned to me. Amanda saw me, and a flicker of malicious glee crossed her face. She probably thought I would break down, that I would scream and shout and join her in making the scene even uglier. I didn't. I walked onto the stage and took a microphone. Julian looked at me, his expression complex. "Claire," I didn't look at him. I addressed the audience. "I have only 3 things to say." The room slowly quieted. First, it is true that Julian and I were secretly married for 3 years. The idea was his. I accepted it, and I came to regret it. The responsibility for that lies with no one else but the 2 people in our marriage. Julian's face went white. Second, I continued, Amanda was not an innocent party who was misled. She knew Julian was married, yet she repeatedly participated in private functions in an intimate capacity and accepted a so-called profession of love at the gala. As for her use of my identity to expense personal items, Nexus already has the investigation materials. Amanda shrieked, "You're lying!" I glanced at Carolyn, who handed the evidence to a technician. The large screen behind the stage displayed several payment receipts. The private details were redacted, but the expense descriptions and the actual purchases were clear. Amanda's face turned ashen. A murmur went through the crowd. She really did use the CEO's wife's name for expenses? This isn't just a mistress trying to get ahead. This is identity theft. Unbelievable. Amanda looked frantically at Julian. Julian, say something. You knew about those things. You approved them. Julian finally spoke, his voice clear. I never authorized you to use my wife's identity. Wife. He had finally said the word in front of everyone. But I no longer needed to hear it. My third point, I said. I didn't come here today for anyone to deliver justice on my behalf. What I want to say is this. In a marriage, the person who is hidden, betrayed, and humiliated is not the one who should feel shame. I looked directly at Julian. The real shame belongs to the one who enjoys another's devotion, only to feel they are not good enough to be seen. Julian's eyes reddened. The entire hall was silent. For 3 years, I went on, I gave Julian many chances. A chance to make us public. A chance to explain. A chance to defend me. Time and again, he chose silence. On the night of the gala, he chose Amanda. And in doing so, he made my final choice for me. A reporter asked, Miss Evans, so does this mean you will forgive Mr. Hayes? I held the microphone, my answer clear and unwavering, no. A collective gasp went through the room. Julian looked as if he had expected it, but hearing the words still made him physically flinch. I looked at the cameras. I accept his apology, and I accept the facts. But I will not spend the rest of my life rewarding a man for an awakening that came too late. I put down the microphone. Julian suddenly grabbed my hand. This time, his grip was gentle, as if he were afraid of hurting me. Claire, don't go. I looked down at his hand. He immediately let go, his eyes pleading. I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness, but can you just give me some time? I'll fix everything. I'll give you a real, proper resolution. I looked at him, my heart astonishingly calm. Julian, you can give your resolutions to your board of directors and to your mother. I paused. As for me, my case is closed. The last bit of color drained from his face. Amanda suddenly started to laugh, a broken, hysterical sound that turned into sobs. Claire Evans, do you think you've won? He only regrets it now because you pulled the funding. Because the company is in trouble. If you had nothing, he still wouldn't look at you. I turned back to her. Which is all the more reason I will never go back. She froze. A man who only learns to cherish something after he's lost a fortune is not a man worth betting on a second time. Amanda was finally speechless. I walked off the stage. This time, no one stopped me. Behind me, reporters were still shouting questions, employees were still whispering, and Amanda was being escorted out by security. Julian stood on the stage, as if he had lost the ability to speak. As I walked out of the conference hall, the sun was shining. A text from David popped up on my phone. Brilliant. Next step, get that divorce finalized. I replied, yes. This long overdue public acknowledgement had finally come to an end. Not with Julian admitting I was his wife, but with me admitting I was no longer his. A month later, the mandatory waiting period ended. Julian finally agreed to an uncontested divorce. The day we signed the final papers, he was much thinner than the first time we went to the city clerk's office. His suit was still impeccable, but he had lost his former air of certainty. He read the agreement over and over, as if to stall for time. I didn't rush him. David sat beside me and gently reminded him, Mr. Hayes, all the clauses were confirmed last week. There are no new additions. Julian nodded. Just before the tip of his pen touched the paper, he looked at me. Claire, after I sign this, are we really done? There's still the asset division process, I said. He gave a bitter smile. You know that's not what I mean. Of course I knew, but I didn't want to engage. He bowed his head and signed his name. The moment the ink dried, I felt no pain, only the quiet click of a door finally closing. The clerk processed the documents. During the 10-minute wait, Julian spoke quietly. Amanda has left the company. We're suing her for the misappropriated funds. I've also clarified everything with the board. Good, I said. My mother moved to her villa in the suburbs. I've let go of most of the staff at the estate, but I kept Maria. She said she wanted to stay. That's nice. The overseas project is still in negotiation. It will be harder without Starlight's funding, but the company won't collapse. I wish you success. He looked at me, a bitter sadness in his eyes. Is that really all you have left to say to me? Polite pleasantries? I didn't deny it. The greatest distance between two people isn't arguing. It's when I can calmly wish you well, but no longer have any desire to walk that path with you. The clerk handed us our finalized divorce papers. The stack of stamped documents felt as light as a feather. I took mine and put it in my bag. Julian held his, staring at it for a long time. When we walked out of the building, A light rain was falling. He opened his umbrella and instinctively tilted it towards me. I took a step back and opened my own. His hand froze in midair. "Claire," he said, his voice quiet. "Is there something else?" He took a small box from his pocket. Inside was my wedding ring, the one I had placed in his suit pocket on the night of the gala. He had kept it. "This is yours." I didn't take it. "Throw it away." His hand trembled. It was our wedding ring. "That's why it should be thrown away." His eyes instantly reddened. "I can't." I looked at him, my voice soft. "Julian, your sentimentality is your own business. Don't use it to tie me down anymore." He lowered his head, his hand tightening around the box. The rain pattered on our umbrellas. After a long moment, he asked, "Can I see you again sometime?" I shook my head. "There's no need." He closed his eyes. "What if one day I really have changed for the better?" I smiled faintly. "Then be a better person. Don't come looking for me to prove it." He stood in the rain and didn't follow me as I turned and walked towards the street where David's car was waiting. Before I got in, I glanced back. Julian was still standing in front of the building, holding the ring, as if clutching a piece of time he could never get back. I felt no pity. The car started, and the rain-streaked window slowly blurred his image away. Half a month later, the second stage funding from Starlight Ventures was fully returned to my accounts. I didn't reinvest in Nexus. Instead, I used a portion of the money to establish a small foundation to support female entrepreneurs. It wasn't to prove a point. It was because I had been at my lowest, and I knew what it felt like to be belittled, to be unseen, to be consumed. I also rented a new studio for myself. It wasn't large, but it was filled with light. A row of sunflowers lined the windowsill. Maria called me once. She said Julian's mother had fallen ill, and after recovering, her temper had mellowed. She no longer mentioned Amanda, or called me ungrateful. She also said that Julian had removed all the orchids from the penthouse balcony and planted it full of sunflowers. I listened and just said, "I wish them well." Maria sighed. "Ma'am, he really does regret it." "Maria," I corrected her, "please call me Claire from now on." The line was quiet for a few seconds before Maria's voice came back, choked with emotion. "All right, Claire." After hanging up, I sat by the window, watching the sunlight on the flower petals. My phone still received the occasional text from Julian. He no longer begged me to come back. He would just mention, sometimes, that the company had overcome a challenge, that his mother had had a checkup, that he had passed by the little noodle shop we used to go to. I never replied. Eventually, the text stopped. Life was finally quiet. One evening, while organizing old belongings, I found a photo from 3 years ago. In it, Julian and I were standing on the balcony of our old rental, a small sunflower in a pot behind us. We were poor then, but I was smiling so happily. I looked at it for a long time, then fed it into the paper shredder. The sound of the paper being cut into tiny pieces was soft, like a long overdue farewell. I didn't deny that I had loved him, nor did I deny that my past self had been earnest, clumsy, brave, and full of love. But cherishing who I was didn't mean I had to sacrifice my future for it. The next day, I wore a bright yellow dress and went to the first meet and greet for my new foundation. The audience was filled with young women. Some had just seen their startups fail. Some had been betrayed by business partners. Some were being pressured by their families to give up and get married. I stood on the stage looking at them and suddenly thought of myself on the night of that gala. That night, I had sat in the last row, a shadow no one was meant to see. But now, I stood in the light. Not as someone's wife, not as someone's secret benefactor, and not as the object of someone's belated regret. I was just Claire Evans. I had finally given myself back to myself.